In this video, we're going to be talking about the accuracy that you can receive out of your AR-15, both from an iron sight perspective as opposed to moving up to a red dot as well as a scope. And the reason why I'm doing this video is there's a large and growing number of people that are buying AR-15s for home defense or casual shooting. Many of them are buying some of the low to medium grade models, and many of them are shooting them within 100 yards or less. Oftentimes they're very casually shooting them, just plinking or want to use it for home defense. So really the accuracy issues outside of 100 yards are really quite minimal for many of these people. So what I wanted to do today was to give everybody a really good understanding as to just how accurate these rifles are, even with their standard backup sight systems. So to begin with, I want to talk about one of the cheapest and one of the, obviously the best sellings are the M&P Sport 2, which you can see here. And the M&P Sport 2 has, just like the one I have up here, the MOE model, has Magpul M-bus backup sights, and then they sight through the A2 front sight. These are actually bore sighted in the factory, and the reason why that's important is a lot of people that would buy a rifle like this for home defense might not have time, for example, to go to the range and get this sighted in. And the benefit that you have with the M&P rifles, at least from what I've seen, is that almost every one of them that I've actually taken out, I've noticed that they are almost completely accurate within 100 yards straight out of the factory. So if you don't have the luxury of going to the range and testing it out and really getting it dialed in, if you're in a home defense situation or short range, what I find is the sights are actually almost completely on and don't need any major changes when you get them from the factory. So that's a benefit you have from the Smith & Wesson side on these rifles that you receive. So moving forward, what I did was I picked 3 of the most common sighting options that you're going to be going with, and then I'm also making the comparison by using the most common ammunition you're going to typically see on the market today. So first off, the first series I shot were through the actual backup sight systems, the M-bus systems that come with the rifle. The second series I did was with an Aimpoint red dot. It's a patrol model. And then the third one is a Nikon 3x9x40 P223, and it's mounted on a Wilson Combat quick connect mounting system for the rifle. So finally, as I indicated before, I used what most people are using today. The casual shooters, the home defense people, they're picking up things like the PMC Bronze or the American Eagle XM193 or the XM855. But this is a very common load you're going to see that many people will shoot casually within the rifle. And that's what I used for my testing here. So obviously it's not the most accurate round that you can fire out of it, but what I wanted to do is give a comparison as to how well it performs relative to these 3 different sighting options. So the first one that I used was the 3x9x40 Nikon scope here, mounted on the rifle. Again, this isn't necessarily dialed in for accuracy, but rather to show you comparisons of how they performed. So this was at 100 yards using the 3x9x40 scope in the silhouette. And basically what I was able to receive was about a 4-inch group, give or take, at the longest point with the XM193 on the silhouette using a 3x9x40 scope. Now, compare that with a red dot. So this is where I take the aim point, put it onto the rifle, and this is the group I fired. It worked out to about a 5-inch group at 100 yards with the aim point. Again, relatively tight, a little off to the left because I didn't have it perfectly zero, but the idea is to give you an idea of the groupings that you can actually receive from this. And then the final group I fired was from the iron sights themselves, the actual sights that came with the rifle. And here's what I received. Firing just the stock iron backup sights, I got about a 4.5 inch or 4.5 MOE out of this rifle. So if you want to make a comparison from one extreme to another, if you look at the group we fired out of the scope, which is about a 4-inch group, relative to a 4.5-inch group out of just the regular iron sights out of the rifle itself, there's not a big difference. Now granted, this is not really accurate ammunition. This is the type of ammunition a casual shooter would fire. I'm sure that with better ammunition we could shoot better groups, but when I'm looking at the general spread here, there's just not that big of a difference, including with the red dot. So the point I'm trying to illustrate is if you have an AR-15 rifle and you're firing within 100 yards or less, which most people are going to be doing, and you're using just general bulk ammunition, you are going to be about as accurate with your iron sights as you can be with a scope or putting a red dot onto the actual rifle itself. So in other words, instead of just doubling the cost of your rifle by putting on a high-end optic, start firing it with the iron sights first. In fact, this is what I always recommend people do anyways when they start shooting, is get used to using the iron sights before you actually gravitate up into higher end optic systems. But as you can see, there's really not that much difference within 100 yards in, which is where most people are firing this with this type of bulk ammunition. So I wanted to kind of dispel that myth and, you know, basically articulate to most people that when you buy your AR-15s, and when they come like these M&Ps do out of the factory, these are excellent sight systems. There's nothing wrong with this. And if you are, like most people, going to be shooting it for home defense or casually, these are just as adequate, and in many cases within 100 yards, just as accurate as any other sighting system you're going to put on the rifle. Now, a final disclaimer is eyesight. You know, I have 20/20 vision, so naturally I'm not encumbered by some issues, but certain people are going to have some degenerative eye issues where an optic might be a benefit to them. Some people might do tactical shooting where they can get quicker target acquisition out of, for example, a red dot. But I'm not talking about the people that go that far to that extreme. What I'm talking about is the casual shooter. And the casual shooter is going to see just as much accuracy, especially when they fire their weapon and use it a while. They're going to see just as much accuracy out of their iron sights as they are if they drop in another sighting system that's going to almost double the amount of money they spent on their AR-15 to begin with. So get used to your iron sights, start using them. They're actually excellent and will perform very well for you, especially if you're doing it for home defense or a casual shooter. You can be just as accurate with these within 100 yards as you can with any one of these others, just with a little training and a little practice. If you like our channel, please subscribe, and thanks for watching.